24-25, we are looking forward to it.
Okay.
It does.
Good evening. All right. 01, first interim report. So this is the first opportunity the board has to, as we update our budget at midway point of the year, essentially here in December, the first opportunity the board has to adopt a revision to our adopted budget that we adopted in June. So this is the version of our budget, the summary of our budget from June when we adopted that for the current year. And then this is now the updated first interim version of our adopted budget for the current year. We've, as always, done the math for you here, and so there's a variety of changes from our revenues and expenses, our ending balance. And I'm actually going to call up Mrs. Michelle Cagle to explain these changes.
Good evening. Okay, we'll first go over the changes to the revenue. There was a $914,000 reduction in our LCFF funding. That's made of two components. The significant one being the reinstatement of the charter school shift. That was suspended during COVID. Basically, the state doesn't want to pay for the same student twice. If a student was attending our district last year and they've moved to a charter this year, the state's funding them on the charter allocation and they'll be funding them on our allocation. So we need to reduce our allocation by the net shift of students going between a district and a charter. For this year, that equated to 80 students. The $169,000 reduction is due to our enrollment coming in lower than we projected at the time of adoption by 242 students. Our DHH billing, our agency has agreements with local districts to provide deaf and hard of hearing services to their students. In the past, that revenue and expense was in our restricted column associated with all of our general special education costs. And working with Patrick, we were able to really identify all of the costs associated with this program. In doing so, it made sense to give it its own resource and move it into the unrestricted column so that we could accurately bill all of our agencies, all the other agencies for the services we're providing to them. That estimated cost for this year is $2 million in revenue and $2 million in expenses. Our title carryover, since adoption, we've closed our books on our 23-24 budget. With that process, we had more carryover than we originally anticipated. Title I had $1.2 million, and with Title I, it's important to note that the federal government gave us an additional $500,000 for this year's entitlement. You'll see the increase in the revenue and the expense for that item. Our community schools, in May we knew we would be receiving, 16 of our sites would be receiving $300,000 for a total of 4.8. However, we had not received the final grant award notification from the state, so during adoption we weren't able to recognize that grant. We've since recognized that in our revenue and our expenses. Our ESSER carryover, that's tied to the capital projects that we thought would be completed by June 30th. They got delayed. They were completed in July and in August. Since then, we have fully expended our ESSER funding by the deadline of September 30th. Moving on to our expenses, the budget now reflects the negotiated and potential settlements. There's a $700,000 increase in our excess liability insurance. If you recall, back in October of 2019, Governor Newsom signed into legislation AB 218, which increased the statutory limitations for filing certain claims. As those claims were coming in, the insurance cost was predicted to be $394,000. At that time, they allowed us to split that cost between last fiscal year and this fiscal year. But as the claims have come in, they're saying that cost to our insurance is going to go up by $700,000. It's predicted that's going to be an ongoing cost until all of the claims within California have been settled. We increased our TK teachers due to having a higher enrollment than what we thought at the time of adoption. And then discuss the carryover community schools, DHH, the expenses that relate to the revenue that we've added. With ELOP, we had an additional $6 million in carryover when we closed the 23-24 books. Any questions? No? Okay, Andy will talk about how that impacts IMYP.
Thank you, Michelle. So as we mentioned, the MYP, so here's now the revision to our adopted budget. The first interim is the current year here, and then that takes us into the next year. So this year here in the ending fund balance